What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Find Your Edge. My name is Jordan Nagoli, and I am your host. Today, we have a very special guest on the show by the name of Dr. James Connelly. He is the founder and owner of Results Rehab here in Atlanta, Georgia, where he helps adults really heal their bodies and get back to an active, free lifestyle. And I'm excited to have him on the show because I've heard his personal story and testimony. It's inspirational, and I think it's something that everybody needs to hear and can really take something away from. So, Dr. Connelly, welcome to the show today, and thank you very much for being here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, you taking the time out of your day. So let's start with this, man. Tell myself and the listeners out there, what does a day in the life look like for you right now?
Yeah, so as far as logistically, I work 5 minutes from where I live. So it's really easy just to get up, roll out of bed, get into the gym. So I work inside of a gym. So my physical therapy clinic, I rent a room in a gym. And then the great thing about that is I have the equipment all right there where I can have the private treatment room where we can do, I do things like dry needling, which is a really cool thing I can talk about a little bit. Joint mobs, manipulation, just stuff to help the body heal, like you were saying, get people out of pain, get them feeling better, and then we get them out into the gym, do the fun stuff, as I say.
Yeah.
Get out there sweating, as you know, you're a weightlifter, get out there lifting some heavy weights, clanking some weights around, and if that's not their thing, that's great. I always tell people, we don't have to go out there and be like an Olympic weightlifter. But my big motto is, let's make you more resilient than you were before. Because I think and I don't know how much detail you want to get in right now, but some of physical therapy has been in the past. Let's just get you out of pain, do some TheraBand 3 sets of 15 and send you on your way. Good luck. And it's like, that's not getting you back to where you need to be, to where you're going to prevent re-injury down the road. I want to make you say, this is your threshold for where you were. I want to get you here so that you're not afraid of getting injured again, So part of weightlifting is just making the body more resilient and making them strong enough so to where they don't get re-injured and they're not afraid of getting re-injured either. So that's what it looks like for me in the gym. I'm able to have that freedom to do that for them. But another part of my business is mobile therapy. So I'm able to I get my weights, my bands, my table, load them up in the car, a nice cushy table for them to lay onto, take it to their house. And they're able to do that because some people, I work with older adults as well, they don't have the greatest mobility. So I want to provide them that extra convenience of going to them. And then I can go into their house or assisted living facilities, usually in the North Atlanta area, sometimes as far down as Buckhead, but just for providing that extra convenience factor for them. So it tends to be, some driving around, usually mostly in the gym, doing some networking in the area. You're in my networking group, so that's another reason I was honored to be on here. I love you guys, and it's just great making that connection in the community. When you build those relationships, for me, it's that deep connection that you have with somebody that helps the healing process too. But then you make those connections and you can refer them to other people. Because I'm an expert in how the body moves. I can for sure get you out of pain, get you feeling better to where you're preventing re-injury. But if you have other issues, mentally or some other kind of medical condition, I can refer you to another specialist, or if they need some video work, I'll refer them to you, and there's different ways I can provide value to my clients than just, hey, I have a hurt shoulder, can you help me?
Yeah.
So I love being able to provide that to them as well.
I love that, man. And I love your approach about the resiliency. And it's so funny you say that because, you and I talked about what both of our bodies have gone through. And I think in life, it's pretty much a guarantee someone's going to get hurt at some point, somehow. Like, even if you don't do sports, man.
We don't plan for it, but it happens.
You don't plan for it, but it's going to happen. You could fall down the stairs, you get in a car accident. I mean, you name it, it can happen. And a lot of times, I think someone that hasn't sustained a serious injury, when they do have it, they don't realize the fear that they're going to have going back to whatever they're doing again. Because it's like, when you have that pain, a level of pain that your body hasn't experienced before, it's trauma that stays in your mind and body forever. And it's difficult to push past that. And then you may not do said activity or lifestyle again because you're kind of afraid of it. So I love that you talk about the resiliency. How much, this is kind of a off the top question, but in addition to kind of the physical side, how much do you work on kind of mental, emotional rebuilding with the body too?
Oh man, that's huge. Like honestly, so I'll take you through my process. So
Yeah,
say you call me up, you say, man, I know a little bit about your history. You say, hey, my back's been killing me. Say, okay, well, what's been going on? What's your history? When did the injury start? How did it occur? Some of those physical questions. And I'll ask you about that, and we'll run through that. Hey, it was an injury in the gym. I felt a pop. I no numbness and tingling, which is always a good sign. No falls. Okay, great. I think we can help you out with that. I'll have you come in during the evaluation. During the evaluation, usually for the first 30, 45 minutes, I don't even put my hands on them. It'll just be a conversation, getting down to not only digging into more why the injury occurred, but what your emotional state and mental state is with it. Because the crazy thing about pain is that, and there's some wild research out on this, but it's the body's way of remembering, right? It's, to your point about protecting the body's great at protecting itself. But now it can be a little too great, because say we get injured and we want to protect ourselves. So our body says, well, I don't want you to go back to doing that just yet. So then we sit on the couch, and it kind of gets worse, and we have that fear in our mind. It grows bigger and bigger, and we never get back into it. Where in reality, what we need to do is slowly build it back up. It's called graded exposure. So that's where getting out in the gym eventually will be good. But I have to train the body even to feel, you start to feel a little bit of pain, a little bit of sensation. That's okay, but we've got to train it not to over catastrophize the pain, to not make it worse in your head. Because we know that stress can make pain worse, which can compound the issue. So it's a lot of that mental training, like I said, and that doesn't happen overnight. The fear that people have can occur on an ongoing, it can occur on an ongoing basis. That negative feedback loop in your brain where you're thinking negatively about a thing, like if I move a certain way, then I'm going to hurt my back. And then that feeds a cycle of I'm not going to move at all, which creates more pain. So that's why I like having the private treatment room, because you're able to talk through these things with them, see where their mind's at, and then take them through these motions and let them see, hey, that doesn't actually hurt. That's not the worst thing.
Yeah.
Let me keep moving in a controlled environment, and then that's where I'm kind of your guide. I can be there for you and say, do these exercises, give it time to heal, so don't go back to working out just yet, but let's give it a few weeks, try these exercises. We'll slowly increase your tolerance, and then that's where the mental component comes in. You start to get these little wins, stack these little wins, and your brain starts to literally rewire itself. It's pretty crazy, but it does actually rewire through different neuronal connections. And then it starts to see, okay, I can move again. I'm not gonna hurt myself.
Yeah.
And over time, you gain that confidence back. Like I said, it's kind of an exposure therapy. And then as you get after that middle component of it, you start to get the physical strength back, and you get that strength where you can do even more than you did before. And that's where you start to see the really cool results.
Yeah.
As they're getting back in the gym, doing their stuff, and that's what gives me passion. Is that the testimonial of, man, I'm killing it now, and thank you so much, and I'm just honored to be a part of that journey for them. That's awesome for me.
Yeah, man. And I think, like you were saying, movement is therapy, and it's kind of counterintuitive, because if you hurt yourself, you're like, I need to stop. I need to rest. And to a point, I think we all do. You need to rest to a certain point. But a sedentary lifestyle will lead to atrophy. Like I remember I had a broken ankle, and man, when I took that cast off after 3 months, it was like a stick. It was nothing. And it took a while to rebuild that and gain the confidence back. But tell me about Results Rehab. So do you have 2 locations?
Yes, 2 locations, one in Roswell, one in Alpharetta. And my main one's in Roswell, and we're kind of using some, I have an employee over there, but we'll see, that may not work out. So it's between 1 and 2 locations.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, man. And how long ago did you guys start the business?
3.5 years ago. So that was April of 2020.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Been awesome.
And I really want to get back into kind of your passion and meaning and journey and story behind this, of how you got into physical therapy and what drove you into this. So let's go all the way back in time to when you were born. Where were you born? Tell me about your family.
Yeah, so I was born in Germantown, Tennessee, small little gas station town outside of Memphis. You drive by and you might miss it. But it was it was a cool place to grow up. My family was from Kentucky though, and they moved all down to Tennessee, and I was born there. And good place to grow up. I went to school there through when I was 16. Always had, great family, my parents, and I have an older brother and an older sister. They were instrumental in how my childhood, which was really key because when I was 8 months old, I actually had a stroke that affected the left side of my body. So it was a hemorrhagic stroke. So it was a weak blood vessel in my brain that burst. And it was actually about as convenient as a stroke could be because I was in the hospital when it happened. So the crazy thing was my mom, I was just crying incessantly. She knew something was wrong, so she went ahead and took me in just as a precaution. They kept me overnight for observation, and I had the stroke in the hospital. So, they were able to stop the bleeding super quickly because the quicker you stop the bleeding for a stroke, the better. And then when you're that young, your brain's very good at adapting and healing itself. So I was able to, have minimal effects on the cause so it was a right-sided stroke, so it affected my left side. So my dexterity on my left hand is a little bit less, and then my left leg, I walk a little bit differently because of the way the muscles created spasticity, meaning they're tightened up, and it didn't allow my bones in my arms and legs to grow as long as they did on my right side. So I had a leg length difference on my left. And that led to a lot of surgery, corrective surgeries, and physical therapy, occupational therapy. And that's where, I just kind of fell in love with it. And that became eventually what I would go into, obviously, today.
Yeah. Wow, man. So I don't know anything about strokes. So a couple questions. So the stroke is, you said a blood vessel burst in the brain. Do you guys think, looking back on it, you were crying excessively? Was your body almost telling you like, hey, something bad is going to happen? Like,
yeah.
Is that probably what happened?
Yeah. So what happens with that the hemorrhagic stroke is it essentially creates a lot more pressure in my case, in the brain. That's where a stroke occurs. But so you get the extra pressure in the brain, and I'm sure as a baby, you can cry for different reasons, but my mom just knew like something is off. This isn't just a normal earache.
Yeah.
So with that, she just took me in, and this was back in 1990s when it happened. So they were able to catch it. But the thing is, back in the 90s, that they didn't really have a lot of research on stroke rehab back then. So I actually didn't get physical therapy until I was 7 years old. So now, knowing what I do now about physical therapy, I'm like, dang, if only we would have had it back then.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't live with regret. I don't believe in that. Like, for me, my faith is big. I think God had a purpose for me, this happening. And I know that's put me on the trajectory to where I'm able to use my experiences to help other people.
Yeah.
So I don't regret that. It's just a part of my journey. Yeah. But that was where, I had the surgery my first surgery when I was 7. So I was in leg braces until I was 7 years old. And then I had surgery when I was 7, when I was 13, and when I was 15. And those were all kind of, I know that's a lot, but those were all basically surgeries to correct the tightness in my leg so that I walked a little bit more normally and with less stiffness. So to even out my gait and prevent injuries down the road from occurring. And they went really well, and I always had, the big thing for me that kind of ties into physical therapy is I always had excellent PTs and OTs. So physical therapists and occupational therapists that, like, when I went into therapy, I wasn't scared. I was just like, it was a kid going to play, essentially. Like, because the type of things you have to do for stroke rehab is like, so I had to learn how to write again. I'm right-handed, but they would make me like pick up grains of rice with my left hand, and then I had to walk like a tightrope and throw a ball and jump over cool objects and all this stuff that's like playing,
Yeah,
so I was like,
training.
cool, I'm going to play for an hour. And yeah, you're training your body. So there is that amount of progressive overload and plasticity that your body has to go through. And you do that in the form of play, especially as a kid. You have to keep us entertained as kids, right? So the therapists were very creative in how they did that and kept me engaged. And then I was obviously meeting my goals along the way. So of course I was getting better. And then as I grew, had to do more therapy, had to do my exercises at home. And it was always just kind of something that I went through in my childhood. But my family was integral in that, and how my outlook on life. And they always taught me, they didn't treat me any differently. They said, they were like, my dad, I asked him about this multiple times, and he goes, because you're naturally just curious, because at that age, I don't really remember what happened, right? Mm-hmm. So I just asked him, like, Dad, what was it like for y'all, and how did you approach it? And he goes, honestly, we just, we prayed about it, and we said, okay, this has happened to us. It's not going to be a woe is me. It's going to be, okay, this happened to James. Let's rally around him. Let's pick him up and treat him like just any other kid. He's normal. Let's push him along. And I was always playing basketball, soccer, always had, plenty of friends growing up. And they just kind of pushed me along and guided me in the right direction,
Yeah.
And that's how I attribute, my mindset and how I approach things today, for sure, to that development growing up.
Yeah. Man, I'm so glad that you had the right support system around you.
Yeah.
I think that's really integral especially as a kid. You don't know what to do at that point. So a couple of things I want to hit on from what you said. You didn't have the first surgery until you were 7, so you were in leg braces. What were the leg braces for and doing?
Yeah, so that was at that point, that was what the doctors thought may help. They were kind of didn't want me to have surgery that soon because I was still growing, So he said, let's just control how the legs are moving and try to even out your gait as much as we can. Because when you're that young and the muscles are that tight from the spasticity from the stroke, so spasticity is just extra tightness in the muscles. Mm-hmm. So the leg braces help to control that, to not make it tighter. So it was full length braces that would, as I walked, they would make sure I could extend and flex my knee in the right movement as I walk. So it's preventing it from getting worse. And it did help. It prevented it from getting worse. And then they got to the point where it wasn't working anymore, and I was old enough. And then at that point, surgery was the better route to go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, a lot of times we're not really aware of our surroundings. We kind of just live
right.
with what we have.
Yeah.
At what age do you remember kind of being aware of what was going on and being like, okay, I have to deal with something different than my friends?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was probably maybe like 8 or 9, and maybe second or third grade, where I was, they would have recess or sports, and I would notice I couldn't quite run the same way, and it would, at that point, I didn't really have a lot of pain, but the way I would run, it would just be different than the other kids.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite as fast or anything. And, kids, there were some kids where I noticed they looked at me differently, or they would ask or say weird things, because kids, they're usually just curious. So
and unfiltered.
Exactly. And that's a great way to put it, unfiltered. So they don't mean it in a negative way, but they just say things. It's like that Bill Cosby show, kids say the darndest things. Like you remember that show? Yes. They would just out of nowhere say things like, didn't mean it badly, but they would say the non-PC things were like, how did you get that? How did you get that gimp, or are you crippled, or some things that aren't the best things to say. And honestly, I've internalized that probably somewhere down deep where, they're mean things to say. And I kind of, I think that did affect me somewhat growing up, where I would just pull away. So I wouldn't have as many friends, but I would have some close friends, but I wouldn't want to put myself out there necessarily for fear of being judged or fear of approval or rejection. And I know that about myself. And I think as an adult, that's kind of, I've worked through some of that. We all have things we work through, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to let it set you back, or you're going to use it to move forward. And I've chosen to use it to move forward.
Yeah.
But again, all that to say, that's probably when I noticed something was different. And that's where having that family support was key, and that group of great friends and family. And as I grew up, I realized that they weren't meaning anything harm, and I don't hold any ill will to them. It's just kids being kids. If they notice anything different, they're going to ask about it, and they're unfiltered,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. And I very much agree. I think for the most part, some kids aren't mean about it, but and then other kids can bully and say mean things intentionally. What would you say to kind of a kid right now that may be dealing with something like that, could have dealt with a stroke, could dealt with anything physical, that they're different and they're going through it, as an adult man that's worked through that, and a successful business owner, successful man, husband? What would you say to someone younger when you look back?
Man, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. But and I didn't even expect that. I knew you talked a little bit about that, but that's a great question. And I would just say, embrace it. Don't look down on yourself, because God created us equally, uniquely. It sounds like a paradox, but we all have our unique traits that set us apart. And the world wants to tell you like to downplay it and to play into like guilt or shame with it. But we're all physically and emotionally different, and that's not a bad thing. You got to play into your strengths, and sometimes they'll appear as weaknesses. But like for me, like I just said, I've taken that and I use that to start my own business and tell people about my experiences and help them heal through their own, so that looks different for everybody. But I would say don't let somebody's words or what they say affect how your outlook on life becomes. Because usually that comes from a place of their fear or insecurity, and they're projecting their issues onto you, and that can be hard as a kid, because especially at that age and go to middle school, it's all about fitting in. It's all about being cool, and being accepted. And that can be tough, for anybody. But that's just once a season of life. We all go through different seasons. You're going to get through it. It's only temporary, and that's where we all have down moments, right? I can't sit here and say that it was all rainbows and butterflies because I had a great family. It was still rough on me, and I had my challenges that I went through with processing that mentally. And it's okay to grieve those things, and go through that process of, honestly, I did ask the question, why, and I still have in the past, kind of recently, like, why did that happen? But that's only for, a temporary season. You ask that question, you move through it, and then you make the most of it, and you don't let it hold you back.
Yeah.
Because you can get to that point where you become resentful, and then you tend to, you can look at the world negatively, and that you can project that on other people, and that's just not a healthy way to live, That doesn't serve you or serve others, So I would say use that in a positive way to kind of help yourself grow in the future,
Man, what you just said was piercing to me, because I relate on many levels, just in the concept of, like, you ask why did this happen? And you can question as years go on. Do you think as an adult, because man, I've thought that for a lot of things, not even my own struggles, for other people's struggles, people that I love, where I'm like, why did that happen to you? Like, you're such a great human being. Why did you deal with this? I found for myself, the older I get, sometimes I will have to make a reason in order to process it and kind of move forward with it. Does that make sense? Like, you have to you look back in time, and the hindsight is 2020, and you tell, like, that happened. Because as a kid, maybe you did know you wanted to be a physical therapist, but you probably at 7 or 8, you're like, this happened because I know later on I'm going to help tons of people. No, you probably didn't.
No.
But in hindsight, you're like, okay, this fueled me. Do you feel like you have an edge? Not that it's a competition between therapists to be better, but do you feel like you kind of have an edge to connect with your patients better?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. So it's, I think it's, to your point about the going through the struggle myself and being able to empathize with people. It's a big thing with me is, medicine is not just the physical, it's the mental and spiritual as well. We're a whole body. We're not just a shoulder, right? So when you come to me, you mentioned that pain aspect. That can be, so let's take, to illustrate, if you have a paper cut.
Yeah.
If you have a paper cut, sometimes it can be the worst thing in the world. You get the smallest cut can really hurt like no other. And then, because what can happen is you get a paper cut, but earlier that day, you didn't wake up on time, you didn't get your breakfast, you had a bad phone call, and then set that all off, then you got a paper cut. So there's all these bad things that compound, and your stress level is already up there because all these bad things have happened. So what does that do? That's that negative thought cycle, and you're getting these stress hormones released that we know have a negative effect on pain. And then you have this other negative thing, little seemingly small cut happen, and it just throws you over the edge, and it hurts really badly. And that's that brain component of that one thing after another, that stress cycle. But then say on the other end of it, to go to the extreme example, but this kind of translates, I think, like say somebody that's in a war zone, they just got shot, but they're not worried about the wound in their thigh or the little shrapnel they got in their finger. They're worried about getting out of the area to not get killed. So the brain focuses on the most the nearest issue to help you survive, right? So in today's standards, that paper cut can feel like everything because we have all these stressful issues going on. But in another situation, you're worried about staying alive, So to bring that back to what we were talking about, if your shoulder hurts, it could have been because of, let alone the little rotator cuff tear that you might have, some basic impingement. But if you slept on it wrong, if you're not recovering well, if your sleep is bad, if you have bills that you can't pay, if you have to work an extra, 3-4 days that you didn't plan on working, something's going on with your kid, that's a lot of stuff that just, some dry needling and some massage isn't going to help, So it's me asking those questions like, how are you really doing? So let's take some time to unpack that. Why did that happen with your kids? What do you feel like is going on at home? How can I help you? Who can I refer you to help you through that? Let me refer you to this mental health therapist. Let me go through what that pain experience is like for you and how we can adjust that at home, and use these different techniques to offload some of that stress.
Yeah.
So it's very much asking those key intentional questions, not just about the shoulder, but about their spiritual and emotional health, and having my past experiences about the stroke and knowing what kids have said about me and, having that strong family support, but then going through physical and emotional struggles of why me, that helps me relate to those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does on a deep level. Man, that was a phenomenal example. I never thought about it that way, but you're right. Depending on the situation you're in, one stressor can save you and another one can crumble you in that moment. And I don't think people realize, you're even showing me I don't, how much our brain impacts how we feel. And the sleep deprivation and the emotional side of things. And I feel like in society we'll segment them almost. The gym, everyone loves the gym, but rarely are we going to talk about how we feel, and it's a part, and I'm a gym junkie. Like I go all the time. But then we'll bottle things up. Going back to your, to 7 years old. So that first surgery at 7, what was that? Do you remember much about that? What was it like at that age?
Yeah, that was one, so it's funny you mentioned that. So, and I wonder if we can go back to that example about the gym. I had another thought about that.
Yeah, tell me.
Well, so what I was thinking about when you said like we bottle stuff up at the gym. So there's an anatomically part of the brain. I'm going to nerd out for a second on the anatomy.
Please do.
All right, we'll go there. So there's part of the brain called the reticular activating system, and it's in the thalamus, in like the deep part of the brain center. So the easiest way to describe what this part of the brain center does, so say you get a new car, it's a blue, I'll just take my car that I got that last year. So it's a Subaru Ascent. So I just get this new car, and all of a sudden, everywhere on the road, I'm seeing this new car. I'm seeing it everywhere. But think about it. There wasn't any more of those cars on the road before I got it.
Yep.
It was the same amount, but I'm focusing on it now. So take that to the gym and what we focus on in our daily lives. We can choose to focus on how crappy our day is, how bad, this person said something bad about me, or, they looked at me funny on the train, or, you just woke up on the wrong side of the pillow. And we're going to focus on all these negative things. So of course we're going to bottle up all this stuff, and then we go to the gym and we just try to crank it out on the, on the squat, on the deadlift, do a lot of cardio, try to get our energy out. But all that negative stress, that's actually, and they've done research on this, so it's all about how you're viewing it and what your intention is. So if you're at the gym and you're trying to undo bottled up energy, it actually creates more negative stress energy that can increase pain. It increases your cortisol levels, which is a big stress hormone, increases your flight or fight response. So that's the sympathetic nervous system response that actually gets you more amped up, and you don't rest as well, you don't recover as well. So all that to say, that all goes back to how we look at it, what our outlook is. And positive, I'm not talking about like the unicorn and rainbows positive outlook kind of thing, but having a healthy sense of, are we just focusing on the negative all the time, or are we grounding ourselves in gratitude, realizing that we get to wake up and we get to go to work. And it's, for me, what helps me is, am I looking at everything as I get to do this, or I have to do this? Do I have to go to work? I have to go to do this thing, or it's making it out of obligation instead of I get the opportunity to do this. This is fantastic, And that actually research has shown that it releases more serotonin, more dopamine, which is the feel-good hormones, more endorphins when you work out, which is that runner's high hormone. And it just leads to a healthier overall person, So that's something to think about in the gym with like the bottled up kind of thing,
Okay, so let's talk about a real life application of what you just said. Let's say somebody has a fight with their spouse, partner, relationship, or they didn't sleep well. They wake up, they're kind of in a bad mood. They got to go to the gym or they got to do stuff. How would you approach grounding and gratitude? Because when you sleep great and life is great, it's easy to be happy. But I totally agree with you that you got to be grounded in gratitude. But man, I literally dealt with this week. I've had a lot of just bullshit going on, stuff in my head, trying to stay positive, but I'm irritable and I've been frustrated. And so how would you kind of go about the grounding and gratitude for someone that's dealing with that, but doesn't know how?
Yeah. And that's a great question, because that's why I kind of touched on, I'm like, let's not pretend like everything is great when it's not, because that's not a health. That's just repressing,
that's
right?
Worse. It's going to make
that's more right. So let's acknowledge that, it does suck, and let's not push it under the rug, sweep it under the rug. But let's count our blessings. So let's see what is great. So you take the fight with the spouse. At least you have a fight to have with somebody, that's better than being alone. So let's start there. But two, let's get to and this just helps me. I'm not a psychologist, obviously, totally. But just kind of personal experience. Let's get to the root cause of why you're mad. Are you blaming that person for, whatever the fight was? I don't know the details. Some kind of fight. And was it because you were late getting home, or was it because you were late and she reacted a certain way and you were mad that she reacted, right? So as much as we hate to admit it, I do the same with my wife. Like, I blame her and I'm like, I probably was wrong, but I don't want to admit it, So
no, what you just said, it's not the act of what it did wrong, it's the reaction of the two people.
Right.
I'm just cracking up.
And then you're mad that she's reacting that way, even though it's your fault to begin with.
You're mad that she's mad that you're mad that you got home.
Well, I'm just not going to talk about it. I'm going to go to bed mad, right? So
I think you just described the basis of all marriage fights
and marriages.
Yeah. It's not what you said, it's how you said
it. Exactly. But the funny point about that is that we don't take time to the how you say it, and taking time to calm down and figure out what's really bothering you. Is it really that the food was cold, or was it that you had a bad day at work? What are you really yelling about, And was it really her fault, or could it be something else, So, and I find, just again, this is just me, but I find a lot of times we argue about stuff that it's really not about that, it's about something else. So that's for me, and I've had to just tell myself, kill my pride. It's not about selfish me. It's about that. I'll take my wife. I love my wife. It's about repairing our relationship and not taking out whatever crap happened in my daily life on her. Leave your crap at the door. Don't bring it into the house. And then don't go to bed angry. Don't be afraid to talk about what's happening. And for me, it's again swallowing the pride of, well, I'm right and you're wrong, and you reacted poorly, and maybe you were probably both wrong. There's probably both fault on both sides. So just apologize, not like a crappy, oh yeah, sorry, but a sincere apology.
Yeah.
And then talk through it, and maybe you won't solve it that night, but at least that kind of opens the door to mending whatever burned bridges there might have, or whatever, kind of starting that forgiveness cycle,
I like that forgiveness cycle.
Yeah. I mean, forgiveness is big with me, again, because the only person you're healing, this is kind of going on a tangent, but this is, again, talking holistically. It's not just
all about healing.
The shoulder, it's, the mental and emotional too, right? So if you're not healing that way, you're going to manifest, and this is something called psychosomatic pain. So you have something going on emotionally or mentally, and it manifests in your body, right? That's very well documented. So if you're arguing and you're just so stressed out and then your shoulder hurts more, that's a sign that you probably need to deal with that. And then your shoulder pain will go down, And that's not to say there's not tissue damage, because we can always affect that, but there's so much more to pain than just the physical tissue itself.
Yeah.
So it's having healthy coping mechanisms for those other things,
I love your approach, man, the holistic approach, because you're right. I mean, it's just that's how it goes. And here's the thing. If someone hasn't had a serious injury, they've definitely had an argument before. They've definitely had a fight before. They've definitely been angry or felt bad about themselves. And you know what else, as I'm thinking about this, because I deal with this, if I'm angry, I get tense. I grind my jaw, my muscles tighten.
Muscles tighten
and I'm like
up.
this.
And
you'll go, and sometimes I'll realize I'm not even breathing. I'm like holding my breath.
100%, yeah.
And which is terrible for us not to breathe.
That whole passing out and dying thing, you know.
Besides that, it's it's not going to be good.
But
for
that
us.
does actually activate. So the flight or fight response I mentioned a little bit ago. So that's that sympathetic side of the nervous system. And I tell my patients this all the time. They'll be on the table and I'll be like, "Are you breathing?" And I could tell they're not. They're so tense. I'm like, "Just breathe." And that's the premise behind the yoga deep breathing. That's the diaphragmatic deep breathing that actually does activate the parasympathetic side, which is the calming down part of the nervous system. And that's been shown to decrease heart rate, blood pressure, relax muscles, increase blood flow, increase your endorphins a little bit. That's all the calming down side of our nervous system. And that does decrease stress as well.
Yeah.
So that's a huge part of that healing process where we can't have you, your body doesn't heal as well if you're not in that more parasympathetic side of the nervous system.
That makes so much sense too, because if we don't sleep, we're almost never going to heal.
Yeah. And what do we do nowadays? It's all about go, go, go. Why do I have to get done? I'll sleep when I'm dead. You know? It's
you're going to die pretty soon if we don't sleep.
Exactly, 100%.
Listen, bro, I'm guilty of it.
We all are. You know, it's like, well, I'll schedule in later and I'll do this and this and this. But then, we try to sleep like during the day. Our brains don't relax as well when there's sunlight out because that serotonin that messes with, or the sunlight affects our melatonin levels, which is the sleep hormone. So we literally have less melatonin when there's sunlight out. So that means the lower melatonin levels there are, the less likely you are to sleep and get into that REM, that deep sleep.
Yeah.
So just if we're going to bed like too early, like when the sun's out, we're trying to take naps instead of sleeping when it's nighttime, then that definitely affects your recovery and how your tissue heals too.
Yeah. It's funny we're talking about this because I didn't intend for it to go this tangent, but I'm glad we are, because really if someone's dealing with an injury, it sounds like, hey, you need to get your emotional and mental health in check too in order to maximize recovery.
Yeah, I definitely tell them that. So it's like when they come to see me, talking about the mock eval, like I said, if you were coming to see me with your back, I would absolutely treat your back, of course, because that's the tissue side of injury. Say you got an injury in the gym, you felt a pop, it's most likely a muscle strain, maybe part of a disc issue, although I think the discs are overblown, so to speak. They do too much talk about disc blowing out and disc herniation, and we don't need to do nearly as many MRIs or X-rays as we do, but that's another story. But usually it's just there's some kind of muscle strain we need to address. So that's where I talk about, doing the dry needling, doing the soft tissue work, joint mobilizations, getting everything to calm down, talk about diaphragmatic breathing, calming down the nervous system. But yeah, we got to address the tissue healing, and then I'll go into the whole body stuff of, hey, how's your sleep? How's your diet? Let me refer you to the dietitian like Abby in our BNI group, and refer you to Lindsay, who does psychotherapy as well to address the mental component. Yeah. So it's a team approach, right? Coming from it at multiple different angles.
How do you feel like patients respond to that aspect of the mental and emotional side? Because I can imagine a lot of people like, Doc, listen, just treat my back. All right, I don't want to talk about this shit. How do they respond?
So you know what? It's funny you mentioned that. I'm glad you did, because where we're at with the healthcare system, that's taking care of itself. People are so tired, so fed up with the current healthcare system of just treat my back, just throw some pain meds at it, just rub some cream on it, that when they get to me, which usually to clarify, so I'm out of network with most insurances. So it's the current healthcare system is more of insurance based, like let your insurance do what you can, go see your doc. They'll throw some pills at it. Whereas the insurance model, I've been in that model before, and it's all based on big business, like what they can get money wise. A lot of it is, and there's a time and place for insurance. But a lot of it, the way the system's set up is you'll go in to a typical PT clinic and they'll have 2 to 3 other people. So I'll see you for 10 minutes. I'll give you to the tech. where you can do some cookie cutter exercises, your TheraBand, 3 sets of 15 that you probably aren't doing right because nobody's looking at your technique.
Yeah.
And then they put some heat on you and send you home. Good luck, you know? And unfortunately, that's the healthcare system, because as insurance reimbursements keeps going down, the other side of the equation, they have to see more people to balance it out to make money, right? So they're seeing 20, 25 people a day. So that's just not high quality care.
Yeah.
So to do that, I prioritize that by one-on-one care. I give you a what's called a super bill, an itemized invoice, where you have all my codes on it and you can get reimbursed through your insurance. And then I am in network with Medicare. And it usually ends up being the same, if not less, going that route as well. Plus, you get the more personalized one-on-one care. So I'm able to provide that one-on-one care to you to be able to say, let's adjust your technique, let's address the mental and physical component, or the mental and emotional component. And then, like I said, once they get to me, they want that because they've been through the PT mill, so to speak, and the broken, what I call sick care, where it's more of let's throw pills at it, see if that fixes it, and they're like, man, James, I just want to get better, you know? And I'm like, that's what I'm about at Results Rehab, so let's do it, you know? And I take them through, well, we need to do this, you need to actually rest, worry about getting better sleep, what's your diet like, actually doing your exercises, being consistent with the exercises with the right technique. And they can always call me, email me, you know, I'm very accessible to them because I want to make those changes immediately. If they're doing the exercises incorrectly, then you go a few days and you're doing them wrong, we're going to take a couple steps back instead of moving forward.
Yeah.
You know?
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So when it comes to the sessions, how long are you typically with someone?
Every session is typically an hour to an hour and a half.
Got it. Wow. Okay. So you're spending a significant amount of time with them.
Yeah, but that's the cool thing is when you actually spend that more one-on-one time, they get better quicker.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm there hands-on. Let's adjust your technique. Let me work hands-on at this muscle because I can still feel that's tight. Let me adjust this. And you make all those adjustments in session. And then, like I said, in between sessions, I check in with them. Hey, are you doing your exercises? How's it feeling? How's that dry needling that we did yesterday? How does it feel today? And that way they respond, and I can immediately, okay, let's hop on a Zoom call. Let me adjust what you're doing on the fly right now and the day of or the next day instead of 3 days later, and I find it out too late. You know, so they get better quicker, and they're spending the same, if not less, money at the same time.
Yeah. Do you have any, and we don't have to name names or information because we care about HIPAA on this show. Any stories that come to your mind are like, I'm really proud of this, like anything you could share of like a difficult case that someone came in and what you had to do?
Yeah, great question, man. So this is early. This is one of my favorite ones. Early on in business, this is probably maybe 6 months or so into business. And he was a guy that he was, you know, mid-30s. He was expecting a newborn. It was their first kid. And he was like, man, I'm in my 30s. I feel like I'm in my 50s. You know, like my back hurts, both my heels hurt, and I can't walk like I need to. When my kid comes, I want to be a dad. I want to be there for him. I want to be able to pick him up without, you know, feeling like I'm going to fall over, you know, and hurt so bad. And so I took care of him, got his heels better. He went to actually another chiropractor, so I referred him to the chiropractor as well to help him with his back. And that's another key. Chiros is not, PTs and chiros can't get along. Contrary to popular belief.
Do they really not? Is that a thing in the
That's
industry?
actually a thing. That's a big,
Really?
And that's, you know, just I tell people it is, unfortunately. I tell people just like there's bad physical therapists, there's bad chiropractors. You know, it just depends on the person. So I'm all about fostering those connections where I know they're gonna do right by the patient, and I know they're doing the right stuff. And this was a good one, and I referred him to him. And between the both of us, he was back to normal. He's like, I felt better now in my 30s than I ever did in my 20s.
Wow.
You know, and just hearing that's why I do it. You know, and that was fantastic.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself getting deeply emotionally attached to patients to where you have to have almost like a barrier to where you take your work home with you to an unhealthy point? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So it's funny you mentioned that. So early on, I graduated from PT school in 2017, and I got from Georgia State, and I got my first job at a big PT company. And that actually is the type of personality I have, is where I want to try to fix people, and I take it on I internalize it. If that doesn't happen, I'm like, well, what did I do? It's my fault, and I'm a terrible person. And that's where that shame component can just run rampant.
Yeah.
And I did end up going, because of that and other things I had going on in my life, but that was a big part of it. I ended up going into depression from it, where they weren't getting better. And I was like, well, and for me, keep in mind, like I said, this is part of my life story. So I was like, I thought I'm, supposed to be this physical therapist, and am I not good enough? And all this stuff that we all have that kind of stuff in our lives, and we all think that. And that for me, I did have to, I got my own mental health therapist, frankly, because I knew I had to take care of myself. And she helped me through a lot of that and a big part of that was realizing we can only do so much. You're doing everything you can. And I knew I had the proper training, but they just weren't getting better. And where I was at mental health wise, though, I took that on myself. And I couldn't sleep. I would woke up, in night sweats thinking about it. And but it got to a point where, as I worked with my therapist, I got to the point where I realized, like, I can't be responsible for everybody. Like, I can do everything I can, but I can't take them. I can only take them so far,
Yeah.
And at that point, it's up to them to do the proper work and get over whatever they have going on. And that journey is different for everybody, And we can't internalize those things because, frankly, it'll just drive us crazy,
It will, man. And I appreciate you being honest and vulnerable about that, because I think other people deal with it too and don't recognize it. Mm-hmm. And it spirals people into depression, and specifically the shame aspect of like, am I not good enough? Do I not have a purpose in this? Because life without purpose is pretty meaningless. Because I've dealt with that too. And I've seen a mental therapist for years, love the guy, and he's really helped me through a lot.
Awesome.
And basically showed me like, hey man, stop being so damn hard on yourself.
Yeah, we are our biggest critics, right?
Well, man, it's funny because this is gonna sound crazy, but I would never tell myself that I was proud of myself. I would never tell myself that I love myself. I have never given myself a hug before, where it's like, look in the mirror and be like, dude, do you actually love who you are? Where it's like, I'm proud of this, but I'd always be like, oh, you got to do better. You got to do better. And I was stealing the joy away from living. And I dealt with that a lot with Force Media when I first started business. And I dealt with that being in the marketing industry. I want to help my clients. Right. And so if a client wouldn't get results, I would think, am I not good at this? Am I cut out? And then we go on social media and we compare ourselves.
Yeah. The doom scrolling.
Oh, man.
The perfect lives of, You deal with imposter syndrome of their life's better and the grass is greener on the other side. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real, man. And that's our culture too, right? Is always trying to see what's better, and see what everybody else has. The comparison syndrome is terrible. And, they say comparison is the thievery of dreams. It's always we're looking around for what's better and the newest shiny object, and it's finding joy in where you're at though, and in the journey of things.
Yeah.
And for me, that purpose aspect is huge, because I think too often we just try to get the newest thing in the society of the newest iPad or the newest phone or whatever, instead of figuring out, hey, what do you really want to do? How do you want to, for me, it's how do you want to serve others? How do you want to use your gifts to make the world a better place? And I think for me, that was a big part when I was going through my depression. I realized I was looking inwards all the time. I was looking at, everyone's looking at me. Everyone's judging me and all this me stuff. And once I started looking outward and realized they're not looking at me, they're too concerned with their own stuff, like everybody's thinking about their own selves to be concerned about you. Like,
yes.
It's kind of counterintuitive, because it's a kind of a selfish way of thing. It's not typical selfishness, like you're doing it on purpose. It's almost a self-preservation thing, where you're trying to preserve your life and you're thinking, I just have to survive. So it's all about me. And for me, it sounds paradoxical, but it's once you start giving more and you start serving others and you do it genuinely, just trying to do better in the world, you start focusing outward and it becomes way more selfless. And then you're taking all the pressure off yourself. It's not, you're not thinking about, are they judging me? What are they going to think? What are they going to say? It's how can I truly help provide a better world for people?
Yeah.
And I found that calling in physical therapy.
Yeah.
And that's what my journey's been since I opened Results Rehab. You know, it was kind of a blessing in disguise for me. We all remember what happened in 2020, of course.
Yeah.
And for me, I got furloughed from my job. And, you know, I was kicking and screaming. I did not want to start my own business. And for me, my faith has been huge. And I prayed about it. And God kept telling me, do it, start your own business. I was like, but I don't want to. Like, that sounds terrible. You know, I don't want to do that. But I did it. And, you know, and the more I thought about it, I kind of, for more or less, I kind of felt like I received a word from God. And he just said, what's the worst that can happen? If it goes under, you can go get another job. You know, and that's where we make it up so much in our minds that there's this terrible thing that's going to happen. You know, and for me, it's, if the business doesn't work, there's a million other PT jobs. But if I don't try this now, I'm going to regret it down the road.
Yeah.
So I opened it. I just started going to people's houses. And during COVID, people weren't getting out, so I would go to them anyway. And it worked out, you know? So that was just a way to force me to try to do this better, what I thought was a better way of doing physical therapy, of providing that personal one-on-one care that I think was severely lacking in the traditional healthcare model. And just focusing on getting people better. Imagine that. Like in healthcare, what healthcare should be. Actually getting them better instead of focusing on the bottom line and throwing pills at people. What a novel idea.
That's crazy, James.
I know, I'm wild. Call me crazy, but I started seeing that results, man. And they were like, and I just kept hearing, you know, keep going.
Yeah.
And then, you know, 3.5 years later, here I am. And it's been a wild ride. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, man. So you were furloughed. So when were you furloughed in 2020?
It was January 2020. Wait. No, it was the pandemic was March 13th or something.
Yeah.
It was like the week after. It was very quickly.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So they saw
did
the
not
writing
waste
on the
time.
wall. They were like, okay, wow.
Yeah, because they saw them, you know, they knew they couldn't keep all the staff on, and they just went in and furloughed a lot of the staff.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, that was a big company where I was grateful to work there because it got my feet wet with how to treat, how to work with people. Because frankly, out of school, you don't know what you're doing. You're like fake it till you make it. And you're like, are they gonna figure out I don't know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
But I'm like, am I a therapist? I'm treating these people. Like, are they gonna realize I can't know what I'm doing?
What you just described, so many people deal with.
That's the imposter syndrome, right? It's totally true. It is,
and I do think at some point, like occasionally we are imposters. Like there are.
Yeah,
like
I mean, because you got to start somewhere, right?
You have to. But you got to fake it till you make it.
You do. And that's what I found in this job. And thankfully, but that's where being surrounded, going back to that community piece, I had great therapists that I was surrounded by, a great clinic director. I made long-term friends that I still have to this day from that job.
Wow.
And, you know, God just put me in a place where he surrounded me with great people and I learned great things and I could take away great lessons from that, but it wasn't where I needed to be long-term.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just grinding. It was a lot of where I got burned out. The patients were getting the proper care. And, but I got the chance to get a great mentorship from it. I got my orthopedic residency from there. So that's my orthopedic specialty. And then, you know, it's funny. I call it my lucky Friday the 13th. So I got the pandemic happened that weekend, March 13th. It was that after that Friday, I took that orthopedic exam Friday the 13th. And then it shut down the next weekend. Oh. So got the test out of the way, found I'd passed that. I was just glad I got that out of the way. And then I just sat back and I figured out what I wanted to do and started my business about a month later. After, of course, I binged Tiger King and all that fun stuff that we all did on Netflix. Dude. And went down the rabbit hole of everything. That's just a side note.
So the whole world really was watching Tiger King at that time. That
it was a wild,
the Last
interesting
Dance
ride.
Documentary.
The Last Dance. That was fantastic.
That was good.
So I went down the Netflix rabbit hole for a little bit, and then realized, hey, let me be productive with my life again.
Yeah.
And just, you know, I found a way to do it to where I didn't want to start my own, get a brick and mortar because that's so much overhead, you know, money wise. And I just found my own business coaches. So that was key for me. Was I didn't have any formal business training, so I just knew I wanted to do physical therapy a different, better way of delivery, but I didn't know how to do any of the business components. Yeah. So, great thing about the age we live in, internet and everything, I just got on Google and Facebook and started searching. And I found excellent business coaches, uncaged clinician, great, fantastic people there. And they've been my coaches for 3 years, showing me, how to do the logistics of get your LLC, have all the legal protection, how best to do the back end business side of things, and how I can deliver the best care. And that's why I started mobile. And then year and a half, I was doing well enough to where I moved into the gym space over in Roswell out of SFX Fitness. Fantastic gym owner over there, Rick Banks, great dude. Just found him kind of networking in the community, shaking hands, trying to make relationships. And did that a year ago. And, it's been fantastic. And I've been growing the business. And it's just crazy to see where my path has gone. And then just the more I just have faith and trust in God in this path of where I've been going, that, I can see I'm on the right path. And I'm glad I'm able to use physical therapy as a tool really to one of my big vision is be a pillar of healing and hope in the community. So unfortunately, and the reason I say those words is because they're very hope poor, a lot of people in the healthcare system. They've had doctors unfortunately tell them, you're never going to walk again. Or they look at an MRI of their back and they say, you can't bend, lift, or twist again. You can attest to that. They tell you these things, and frankly, this isn't based in research. They have no idea. They're just saying that because, one, some of it, it's unfortunate, but they're afraid of a lawsuit. They don't want you to go out and say, my doctor told me this, and then they get sued. That's why malpractice insurance is so high now. So they're afraid that it's ulterior motives. But what happens with you, of course, is and you can speak better to this, but people see, and in my experience, they see these x-rays or MRIs. MRIs, they show bulging discs, bone spurs, some herniated discs, torn ligaments, and they see that and it freaks them out. So they don't want to do anything. But research has shown that doesn't really correlate to people's pain. Unfortunately, that's not being communicated in the doctor's office, though. They just see this image and then they shut down. They become sedentary, which actually makes your pain worse over time.
A lot worse.
There's a time for that rest, and to your point, we call it active rest. You back off, you regress as you need to, slowly ease back into activities, and that's where I come into play to show people the right dosage, the right order of activities, when to do them, how to recover properly, what type of exercises to do. That all has a very precise order to do it, and that's where I kind of guide them through that. But it's definitely a process. It's not just sit on the couch and don't do anything because you're afraid your back's going to explode. That's It's not the right answer.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad that you brought that up on the concept of basically doctors instilling limiting beliefs on their patients. And like you said, I was told I'm never going to be able to bend, lift, or twist again my back. And
you're a young, healthy dude. That's the crazy thing.
And I was told that let me think, my surgery was 2018. I was 23 at that
That's
time.
wild.
And I believed, I did and I didn't believe him. The way I felt was I was like, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to, like how I feel right now. But the other side in me, and this is really from martial arts, for being like, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to pretty much show you that I can. But what held on to me forever, which I kid you not, until this year, I was not able to let go of it. It was the fear of bad things happening, the fear of getting injured again, which my coach and my trainer really worked with me on. He's like, hey man, you can do this. You have the strength. And he had to beat it into my brain of you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. And the problem is you got a lot of people. And I was sedentary for almost a year of all right, nothing's worked, so I'm just going to do nothing. And then I got worse. And then you have to keep moving, and then you have a lot of fear. So I agree with you, man. And the hope, man, you're right about the hope. About people having just believing in themselves, which it's that's, like you said, if you have a shoulder injury, you got to treat the shoulder. Absolutely treat the shoulder. But there's probably a lot more underlying factors that people don't realize about. Another big one is diet that people don't talk about. A lot of inflammation, especially in the American diet.
Oh my gosh, it's awful.
That's a whole other conversation.
That is,
I've noticed that too with my body. This year, I've noticed even a lot of oils in foods where I'm like, I just don't feel
the seed
good.
oils.
Seed oils. I don't feel good. And I've started to notice quick reactions to stuff. I'll eat it, 2 hours later, I won't feel right. I'll have brain fog.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Almost immediate where I'm like, man, I've not had Chick-fil-A nuggets in probably 6 months.
Oh man, don't tell me that. I love Chick-fil-A. Don't ruin it for me.
I'm not gonna listen. Everyone's got their thing.
Everyone has their, even me has a vice. But every once in a while, everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation.
But to your point, the inflammation, we don't realize how much there is in our foods. and what's put in it, and it's a lot of preservatives that preservatives are there obviously for more long term, because you have to feed a bunch of people, but when they don't tell you about the long term effects of it. We're seeing this with cancer, stroke, heart disease, all these preventable diseases we're now seeing are a lot due to chronic inflammation. Even like Parkinson's and autism have a strong link to chronic inflammation. And they don't tell you that though, and it's unfortunate, but it is reversible. And that's the great thing, to your point, is we eat clean, we work out, we, cut the sugar out. That's another big thing that causes a lot of inflammation too. It's just you do those things, it's terrible. And you can, the great thing though is it is reversible. Your body's very resilient. It's great. And I talk all about prevention. I'm all about upfront injury prevention, living a healthy, clean life in general. And ideally that'll keep you out of my office. It sounds counterintuitive. I love my clients. I'd rather not see you in my office all the time though. Yeah. Let me empower you. That's a big thing. Is one of my slogans is heal, empower, and succeed. So let's heal the body. Part of that is by empowering you with the knowledge and skill set and tools like the diet, the exercise, the recovery, the exercises, of course, empower you with all that so that you can, if you have an issue down the road, you can go back to these things. You don't have to come see me all the time. Yeah. That's my thing, is setting them up for success long term.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Okay, so James, I know we've kind of gone on different tangents, which I love. Let's get back to, it was 7 years old, your first surgery. Walk me through what happened at that time. How much do you remember?
Yeah, so from what I remember and what my parents have filled in for me at that age. So I had the surgery at 7. I think I started to say, so the funny thing about that was I had to find the humor in it, right? So I had this surgery where they had to, it's called a tendon release. So for my adductor muscles, which are your groin muscles, they were really tight. So they had to actually cut those to release them to release the spasticity. Because I was kind of walking with like a scissor gait, which means my feet were kind of close together, my legs were, because of the spasticity in my groin muscles. So they released those along with my posterior tibialis tendon, which is this muscle down here, to correct how I walk, how my foot was turned in. And they released that. But to do this surgery, at the end they had to put me in these 2 casts where my feet were spread apart and there was a bar in between my legs to let it heal properly. So it was kind of like this, and just imagine that with like trying to go through a door. Yeah, so it was a lot. But sorry, I kind of put that on there. But so we had this cast, and for my parents to get me into the playroom upstairs, the room upstairs, they had to turn me sideways and fit me through the door. So it's just, that's my way of, that's the humorous side of it, at least for me. But for me, that the recovery process was, I just got to sit on a couch and play video games. So it was great as a kid. You know, that's what you love. So I got to do that growing, as for recovery and being up in there and recovering that summer. And then, that was, I was able to run and walk better after that. Mm-hmm. And then it was, I played basketball, soccer after that, mainly basketball. I'm definitely more of a basketball person. And then I had, my other one was when I was 13, and that was the hamstring muscles. They lengthened those. That was a hamstring release. And then my ankle was fused. So that was, I played lacrosse in 8th grade. And just because of the way I ran, there was a lot of pounding on my ankle. So it caused a bunch of bone-on-bone rubbing. It wore away the cartilage of my ankle. So I went ahead and had the ankle fused in 8th grade. And that was not that bad of a recovery. It was kind of just expedited the process. It would have happened eventually. So I went ahead and got that out of the way because I love to be active. Yeah. So it just happened.
How long was the recovery for that?
That was probably about 3 months, 2 to 3 months. So not too bad. And as a kid, you recover quicker, right? So I bounced back pretty quick from that. And then that just limited my ankle mobility. So I can't really move my ankle, but no pain at all. And that kind of helped that part of it. And then the other one was my, there's 2 others. The third one was when I was 15. And that was just my own dumb fault. I broke my kneecap as playing basketball as a kid. That was just me being a kid. And then I was actually in a mobilizer, a knee brace for 12 weeks. It was pretty much healed. Doc said I could take it off, took it off. Didn't tell him I was going to play football that day. Re-broke it. So dude. The doctor or my parents weren't too happy about that one. That was just me being a kid. So at that point, he was like, got to fuse your knee. You got to do surgery. So two screws in my knee. And then that was like a 2-month recovery, and then no pain in that at all. It's fine, completely fine now. And it was active again, kept playing. I always played Frisbee, basketball. I'd always had a passion for basketball, still do today. And then my latest one, and probably last one that I'll need, was a leg lengthening procedure. So I mentioned way back when that the stroke caused the spastic muscles, which didn't allow my bones to grow properly. So it made my left leg 1 3/4 inches shorter than my right. So always had kind of an off-kilter gait. And there was this procedure. There's always been a procedure around called, it's an external fixator is what they use. So think about basically like a medieval contraption and that's why I never had the surgery, because it's a big cage that they put around your leg and they bolt screws into your femur. And then you physically screw the screws that lengthens it. So I was never going to have that, high rates of infection anyway, lots of pain. I could deal with a little bit of limp to avoid that. It's not that big of a deal. But come to find out, there's a guy in Atlanta who learned a new procedure from a doctor in Florida where they take a magnetic rod. They have to break your femur, so that wasn't the most fun. Break the femur. They insert a magnetic rod into your femur, close you up, and then I put a magnet on top of my leg, and that magnetically lengthens the rod, and then the bone fills in as the rod lengthens. Pretty gnarly stuff.
What?
Pretty crazy.
What?
So I'm like a biomechanical man. You've seen it? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
it's
you had
pretty
that
crazy
done.
stuff. So I had that done, and then go ahead.
I was going to say quick side note here, because I'm very curious. So I have an adopted brother from Haiti, and he had the cage lengthening procedure done. So he was born with rickets, so he had both of his legs bowed in.
Oh, gotcha.
And had to have both legs broken. Really serious surgeries over a 2.5-year period. I was with him the whole time during the recovery, and what you're talking about, it is brutal.
Yeah,
the screws in the legs. Very tough. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. So when did this procedure come about? I've never even heard of that.
So this procedure, the procedure itself, I believe, came about 15 years ago, and the doctor that developed it was in Florida. So it hasn't been in Georgia that long. From what I know, the only doctor that does it is this Dr. Bruce at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and he mainly does it on kids for conditions like that you were mentioning. But he did say, when I just happened to hear about it from my mom's person that I can't even call her a friend. It was just kind of a funny thing that happened while she was at the pool. She happened to talk to this person that was there and noticed the way I walked, and she was like, "Hey, I noticed your son walks differently. Does he have a leg length difference?" And they just got to talking, and she said her son had this procedure and got her in touch with this Dr. Bruce at Children's Healthcare. So by a wild coincidence, I wasn't even looking at the procedure. I hadn't even thought about it. So for me, that was just another God thing. Like, this was a put on my path, and it was a way to do this new procedure, because I knew down the road I was going to have something. Because coming from a physical therapy perspective, I knew the weaker you are, the more off your gait is. Gait speed is actually really indicative of falls down the road, and this kind of thing makes you walk slower. So I knew down the road I would be at a high risk for falls. And the one thing that we all hear is when people fall, when they're old, they break their hip. It all goes downhill from there really quick. So I knew eventually I was going to have that done. And this doctor that was brought up to my mom happened to be at Children's Healthcare. And I went and talked to him. He had put me in contact with a guy he had done this for. And I talked to the other guy, and he said it did wonders for me. A great procedure, and highly recommend it. So I got that done in 2021, and it lengthened my leg 1.5 inches. So he left about 1/4 inch, because since my ankle is fused, I don't get much ankle motion, so he wanted me to have room to clear my foot, so I wouldn't trip, obviously, and it's been great. Like, the recovery, it was a little rough in the beginning because of the broken femur. Wouldn't recommend that for anybody, so that's not fun. I'm sure you said your brother had it, and I'm sure it's just not. It's not great.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. There's no way around it. But I knew I needed to have it done, and that was the best way to do it. So the first month or so, just a lot of waking up at night, a lot of spasming from the muscle spasm because of their healing. And but then after that, it was just a lot of strengthening. And that was the last one that I'll probably need.
Damn, man. Medicine is It's incredible what
Wild. It's
what
pretty
they can
incredible.
do now.
Yeah.
So do you still have the magnet in your leg, or is
No,
that,
they took it out, and I wanted to keep it, but he wouldn't let me keep it. He allegedly said it was too big to give me. I think they just wanted to keep it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I was bummed out because it was a really cool little contraption. I wanted to like put it up in my room. My wife probably wouldn't have liked it, but I would have loved to keep it.
No, I mean, this thing helped you. Okay, so walk me through it. So they did the surgery. How long was the magnet in there? And then you said you have to put a magnet on top as well? Is this sessions throughout the day? How did that work?
Yeah, so it was essentially I would have to do it twice a day, and it was programmed. No, sorry, 3 times, and it was programmed like 0.1 millimeters each time. It was lengthened, and the lengthening process would take like a minute each time throughout the day. And then I did that over 4 weeks, I think, and that lengthened it the full 1.5 inches that I needed. And then after that, it was a strengthening, and they took it out a year later because he said we don't know what a magnet does long term in your body. So they'd rather not leave it in there, not chance that.
That's a pretty fair assessment.
So just to be safe, so we took it out, and then, like I said, unfortunately, I would have wanted to keep it, but didn't let me.
Dang. Okay, so how does it? Is it lengthening your bone?
Yes. So that's why they had to break the femur, because if they don't break it, then obviously there's nothing to lengthen, right? You can't just put the rod in there. So they had to break the femur, and then 4 little incisions. One of the incisions up here is where they actually put the rod in. And then actually the magnet itself lengthens the rod through the magnetic device that's in there. So when I put the magnetic device on my femur, it lines up with the magnet inside the rod, and that makes the rod itself lengthen so that the bone that's broken is actually going apart. And it's very precise, because if you do it too fast, the bone won't fully heal. If you do it too slow, the bone will fuse together too quickly. So you have to do it at very specific increments at the very precise amount.
Yeah.
And so it was a very specific thing that we had to lengthen it to make it fill in at the right time.
So it would technically remain almost broken the whole time, but slowly healing and
Exactly.
Holy shit, man.
Yeah. So that was a 4 to 6 week process.
I mean, I can only imagine the pain you went through for that, but that's still an incredible.
Well, and to that point, I documented that. So this was I was owning my own business still at this point. This was 2021.
Yeah.
So I was documenting and showing my clients, here's what I go through. Here's what you need to do this kind of procedure. So I could document that and tell them my journey and what I'm experiencing, and saying, here's what you're going to have to do. Here's putting in the hard work, but you can do it, and now I'm stronger than ever. I don't have any issues of tripping, and less issues of falls down the road. So that was just another way that I can show through my experiences, hey, this can be done, and here's what I'm doing to help myself get better.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's powerful for patients to see their doctor going through something, in an extreme case too, of something that is challenging to deal with. And with that last question about it, would the 3 sessions throughout the day, that's like 1 millimeter each time, would that kind of be equivalent to the screws of the cage for that, where that, as they do the screws, that slowly lengthens it?
Right. Yeah, so the old procedure, that's what they would do too. And that's different for everybody, just based on how much they need to lengthen. So that was just specific to what my doctor wanted me to do. Yeah. And it was very, at one point it was lengthening too fast, so then the muscles were tightening up too much. So a lot more pain and stuff, so we had to back it off a little bit. But yeah, it was something to where it was very precise, where you didn't want to do too fast or too slow, because you didn't want it to fuse or not be able to fill in.
Yeah. How do you feel present day?
Feel great. Yeah, it was. So to that point, I was having more issues with before I did it. If I were to like run over a mile, it would, my left hip or my back would hurt a little bit, and that doesn't happen anymore. And it's also on top of that, it's just I do have to be good about doing my exercises, so I have to be a good patient, right, and do my own exercises. Imagine that. So which also helps being in a gym. I just go out into the gym space and I can do my own stuff.
Yeah.
So it's always an ongoing journey for me, but it's great because I love working out anyway. So it's just I just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Wow. Going back to kind of high school, teenage years, curious a little bit more about the story getting into becoming a physical therapist. At what point, so you're in high school, when was the last surgery as a teenager? 17?
I was 16.
16. Mm-hmm. At what point did you say, all right, guys, I think this is where what I want to do. This is the path I got to take with college. Walk me through that.
Yeah, so funny enough, it wasn't until I was like junior in college that I settled on PT. So I went into college. I went to UGA, go Dogs. Went in as a freshman. Had no idea what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So my dad was like, just going as a business major, what all undecided college people do. But I knew pretty much from the get-go, even before I majored in business, it sounds petty, but I didn't want to wear a suit and I didn't want to be stuck in a cubicle. Those two things I knew. So I knew pretty much right away that business wasn't going to be for me. Let alone I didn't want to take, econ and some of those business courses.
Yeah.
So pretty quickly changed my major, changed it to psychology. Absolutely love psychology. Some of my favorite courses were abnormal psychology and health psychology. Sort of fantastic. So majored in that for a couple years. Thought I didn't want to be a clinical psychologist. I thought I was going to go into industrial organizational psychology, which is a really interesting field where kind of similar to HR, but it's like it's how to maximize the teams, how they work together. So you analyze their personalities and how they function as a team, and you maximize their efficiency that way. So that sounded cool, but it just wasn't quite right. And then I settled, I just started thinking more about it and talking to my family about it. And I finally was like, just an aha moment. I was like, duh, physical therapy. I've been through it so much myself. I want to be active. I want to, wear something like this every day, and go help people. And it just fit, And then I loved the classes. Anatomy and physiology was for sure one of my favorite classes in college. I'm all about that kind of the gross anatomy, functional anatomy side of it. And then, I just got into it at my first job, and I just loved the physical therapy aspect of it. But then it just kind of took some tweaking on how I want to do it long term.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Quick question about the psychology courses that you took.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing that I love about doing these interviews is I psychoanalyze everybody and I try to piece together what makes them who they are and how they act. And a lot of times, certain things that we've done in our lives will have a massive impact on how we act going forward. Do you think, how much did those classes have an impact on how you analyze your patient's emotions and mental, like we talked about the mental emotional aspect, how much do you think that impacted you present day?
Good question. So I do think a lot of the psychology stuff did. So for instance, I mentioned the health psychology class. To this day, I still reference that class because,
That's what I thought.
And I'll tell you about the book that we read mainly for that class. It was a book called, I can send it to you later. It's called How the Zebra Got Its Stripes. And it's all about chronic stress and how terrible it is for our bodies. So it's pretty much besides smoking, it's the worst thing you can do for your body. And I'll take you through a brief example. So we think about what is the stress response, right? So I mentioned earlier the sympathetic nervous system. So that's our flight or fight response. So back in the day, caveman days, the stress response would kick on because we had to get away from a lion, right? So it'd be on for 2, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, pretty short amount of time, and then it would go off. It does its job, it kicks on, it kicks off. That's fine. It was an acute response. But what happens nowadays, we have bills, we have kids, we have work, we have all these different stressors that are artificially making our sympathetic nervous system, that flight or fight response, stay on 24/7. And what is research finding? That these cortisol levels, these adrenaline, all these glucocorticoids is a technical term for these stress hormones, are wreaking havoc on every single system in the body because it wasn't built to stay on 24/7. It was built to, hey, let's not get eaten and then let's turn off after a few minutes. But now, yeah, right, it made sense back then, but now we're just creating our own stress responses.
Yeah.
So I use that example all the time for people's daily life. So I'm like, you got to find a way to relax, just whatever that means for people, meditation, yoga, prayer, the gym, just get in your happy place that you just feel super calm. Heat is an excellent way to just increase blood flow. Tissue-wise, that does create healing. It flushes out the toxins, gets the good chemicals, so to speak, to the area to help create healing, but also just relaxes us. Who doesn't love getting in a good hot tub, and you just kind of melt, right?
I love it.
And that's your body's way of saying, this is what I need. This is activating the parasympathetic side of the nervous system to get you truly to relax so we can do the proper recovery, and calm down everything. So I reference that, like I said, to this day to get people to realize it's not just the tissues. If you're not creating a good environment for your body to heal, it's not going to heal anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing, and that makes a lot of sense because throughout this interview, I'm like, man, you understand people very well, and I think that's a skill because you understand the physical aspect, but clearly based off our conversation, you understand the mental and emotional aspects. So when I heard the psychology, I was like a bell went off.
Yeah.
And I say that because I hosted trivia nights. I did
Nice.
at bars and pizza restaurants for like 8-9 months the first year that I had Force Media to help supplement some income. And it is single-handedly probably some of the greatest public speaking and on the mic training that I've ever had because you get 20 drunk teams playing trivia. You got to DJ, you got to answer all these questions at the same time. But if anybody ever asks like, hey, how can I be a good speaker? Stuff I say, guys, like do something like that.
Yeah.
That I only did that because it paid well. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get like 75
And
bucks.
you never thought it'd lead to these other soft skills.
Ever, but I constantly reference that because I was I know it sounds funny, but when you're trivia hosting,
you're multitasking. You're getting put in all these different directions.
I had
and you
to
had to learn
DJ
how
the
to
music. So if you didn't have good music, you'd literally get yelled at by the guests.
Oh, jeez.
Then you have to manage the scorecard of the game. If you fuck that up,
Don't mess an answer up. They'll kill you.
no, they actually will. I had a woman threaten me because I didn't know this.
Way too seriously.
But there's a subculture of trivia hosting games where the final competitors compete for $50,000.
Oh, I didn't know it was that
at
much.
the international trivia competition, or sorry, the national trivia
way.
competition. Then you have the games that night, so you have to do the DJing, you have to do the song or the songs, manage the games, and manage the answers all by yourself.
Talk about pressure and stress.
Yes.
You needed a good hot tub after that.
You really
Maybe
did.
a drink.
But what it showed me, I thought I was dying the first few times. I was like, this is miserable. And then got my feet wet and I realized I could do it. But I just find it fascinating because part of the purpose behind the show is for the listeners to understand, like, look at yourself today, like a successful man, accomplished, but you had to work to get there. Even as short as 2 years ago, you had another surgery. Like you're still going through the fire that's just sharpening you as iron, basically.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens
Well, and to
iron.
your point, I love that example about the trivia because we never know what we're going to gain from some experience. Like in the moment, it can seem like, why do I have to do this class? Why do I have to do this crappy job? I don't want to do this. Well, again, it's not about you. One, you don't know what you're going to learn from it. So take it, learn what you can from it. It may not be where you're at permanently, but everything has a season. I firmly believe that. And, you could you have the attitude of grinding through it. Oh, why do I have to do this? Woe is me. This is crappy. Or make the most of it. And why wouldn't you want to do that anyway? Because you have to do it. So might as well do it to the best of your ability and do it with a great attitude. And then you never know how it's going to turn back into, something better in the long run.
Yeah, you never know. You just made me also think of, I had speech therapy when I was a kid for 3 years.
Nice. I did too.
You
Couldn't
did?
pronounce my R's.
Neither could I.
Yeah. Maybe it's a guy thing. I don't know.
Neither could I. And man, I was so embarrassed to do speech therapy the first year. And I had to do it in the library at our school. And the library had windows. And so kids that would walk by, like I'd get made fun of later because I forgot the teacher's name, but they would know who I was with. And they're like, oh, you're doing this therapy, making fun of me. Well, guess what now, suckers? I'm a great speaker. So
Bam.
suck it.
I can pronounce every single R perfectly.
Every R.
Killing it.
To make it even funnier, I can't roll my R's like you would do in speaking
either.
Spanish. And so my wife gives me a hard time. And I'm like, you don't understand, babe. I did 3 years of therapy to pronounce
Just
my
pronounce
R's properly.
it.
I was like, my tongue will not do that.
Like, just give me credit for that. I'm not even trying to go there. I'll tell that to my wife because she can do her R's. She's like, just do it. I'm like, I can't.
Man, that's so funny. And you couldn't roll your R's either.
Couldn't roll my R's
I kid you
either.
not. You're the first person I've ever talked to that had the same thing. So,
But yeah, I had it for about probably a year or two as well. I think it was probably more 2 years or longer because I was so frustrated. I kept having to stay in speech therapy.
I hated it.
Like I would see kids come and go. I'm like, why am I not graduating yet? Like this is so annoying. I don't want to do this anymore. It was the worst.
Yeah.
I think it was like kindergarten or first grade, and I was like, I'm just tired of this,
Yeah. Yeah.
But I eventually, I got over it, got through it, and look at me now.
Look at you now, man.
Perfect. I'm going to be rolling my R's. Who knows? I'll be over there with Travis, the Cool Kids Club.
Yeah. Those people.
Those
over
people.
there. Okay. While we're on this topic, anything else come to your mind that you did in life where you're like, man, I didn't want to do this or I had to do this, and this really helped me as a grown man, professional in my life or anything like that?
So you know what does, and it's currently actually is public speaking. So I took a public speaking course in college, and I was horrible at it. I feel like I never got better from the first day to the last. But they tell you like, yeah, just take this course, you'll be great. I was like, I'm never better. Well, this is terrible. I'm still awful. But something like having to start my own business. So here's what I'll say. Starting my own business, one thing my business coaches say, which has proven to be true time and time again, your personal growth will never surpass your business growth. So that's really resonates with me, because what do you have to do when you start your own business? You have to do everything. You have to get over your limiting beliefs of, I can't talk to people. I'm going to be afraid of getting rejected, because I've been told no a million times.
Yeah.
And if I stopped, then I would have closed my doors a long time ago. But when it's not about me and it's not about that fear of rejection and fear of what people are going to say, then I don't care if they say no, because I have a bigger purpose of, I'm going to use physical therapy as a tool to give others their lives back. And if you say no, I'm going to go to the next person until I get a yes, you know?
Yeah.
And I've had to learn to make that just not as hold me back over time, because again, I have a bigger purpose than just not about me. So one thing that's helped me with public speaking is realizing that I have this calling to, again, use physical therapy in a different way to serve others. So being in our networking group, we have to get up there and do our 30-second spiel every Thursday. And as you said, like I get nervous, like talking, just standing up, and I get that dry mouth feeling that you were talking about.
Yep.
And even giving our 10-minute presentations that we have to every few months, you know, but that's those soft skills that you never know going into in the beginning. It's, you know, you may not want to do it, but then you realize we get client referrals from that group, but we also get better at public speaking. We get better at the soft skills of interacting with people and honing in our messaging, you know, all these other benefits that we didn't necessarily realize going into it, you know, just for the referral aspect, but we're getting all these other benefits from it.
Yeah.
And I've gained better public speaking for sure from it. And I've gained the ability to have more concise, clear messaging about what I do, being confident in how I'm speaking and who I'm speaking to. So that for sure, putting me on in the networking group, and I'm in a couple other networking groups, and then again, opening my own business, like I've had to swallow my pride, swallow my fear of rejection, and get over all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's been, the last 3.5 years have been huge for my growth personally in that, and way more than it was before that. I grew way more in the past few years than I have ever before that.
That's incredible, man. One, the fact that you had the foresight and knowledge to hire a business coach, I think is genius. I've had a coach for 6 years now.
Awesome.
And a business mentor for the last year, and absolutely game changer for my business.
For sure, yeah.
And putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. And basically what you're saying is like, it's not about you. And I really love the mission that you said, like my mission is to help and serve other people and help heal their bodies. Because if you didn't have that, you'd probably you'd probably give up pretty easily.
100%,
if you don't have that purpose and that mission, like your why, what's your why behind doing something? When you find your why, man, you become dangerous.
Yeah.
And when you become dangerous, people better watch out. They like you're not going to take no, or even not take no for an answer. One door closes. I'm a firm believer in this. One door closes, another opens.
100%.
And if the door's not open, man, get a chainsaw, cut it open,
right.
Put the frame in yourself, get through the door.
Make a way.
Make a way.
Dude, that's so true. But you know what I say is there's a lot easier ways to make money than just starting your own business. So if you're going into it for just making money, you're not going to last.
This is a public service announcement to everyone. I'm going to look at the camera. To everyone out there that wants to start their own business to make money, don't do it. It's a terrible idea. You will not make money. You will lose a lot of money. You will hate yourself. You'll probably hate your life. You'll probably get super depressed and you go into a lot of debt and you'll be very unhappy. If you want to make money and you want to own your own business, go work for someone else in that industry first. Learn everything. See all the mistakes that they make. Save your money. And then possibly go start your own business. We don't need more business owners. We need people that love what they do.
Who are looking to serve others.
We don't need, first of all, I'm gonna go on a quick soapbox. The entrepreneurship, it irks me how society has turned like glorifying entrepreneurs and like just saying that.
Because what do they say? Here's how to make $1 million.
Yeah, and I hate that, man. My company is nothing without the people that run this business. I cannot do a quarter of what they do. All that I do is bring clients in, help manage the team, and help pay the bills. That is it. Everybody else, the infrastructure is around that. And I think there's this glorification of like ownership and entrepreneurship that is just not real. It's not real.
Well, so you know what? That's a great point. I think part of that is we have our priorities wrong. You know, this is going back to kind of what society teaches us. It's all about money. You know, it's all about grabbing the money and grabbing the attention and grabbing the reputation. And I want to be seen. It's all about me, me, me. Well, and I've proven this to be true. Yes, it is hard in the beginning, but when I've placed the value on, I just want that person to get better. I'm just caring about their best interest, and the money will come. That's been proven over and over again. And I'm making more now than I ever was in my old job. Thank God. It's great, but I've only done that because I haven't put stress on myself to let's go make $1 million. You know, I don't care about that because look at, you know, celebrities and all these people with a lot of money. They have a lot of depression and issues, and we see it time and time again. You know, it's this materialistic attitude of money's going to make me happy or this is going to bring me my happiness. And no, that's not. Find your passion and go pursue your purpose, because what I found to be true is money can't buy your joy, you know, and your fulfillment. So one thing that my coaches talk about, and I love how they're so different than others, a lot of the entrepreneurial coaches out there that are just, here's how to make a quick buck, is they have 5 things that we talk about. It's faith, family, fitness, fulfillment, and finance. And finance is the last one. It's one piece, but it's 1 out of 5. So we go through that wheel. That it's a wheel all the time, and we go scale 0 to 10. How are you on all these things? And if it's a constant tension, a constant pulling. Usually, if you pull one in the other direction, something else is going to give, right? But it's trying to find the balance of, does your business bring you the most out of those 5 things, the highest amount on all of those pinwheels, and how can you maximize those things? Because if you're making $1 million but you have a crap home life, then what's the point? You know, like I got out of a big box job so that I can provide the time freedom, so I can have a great home life, so that I can provide great health care for my clients and do the things I want to do for my fulfillment and for my clients' fulfillment. And if I'm just focused on the money, then if everything else is bad, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
You know?
Can you repeat the 5 things again? I want to hear that.
Yeah. So faith, family, fitness, fulfillment, and finance. So most things just focus on the finance, of course. Yeah. But if you're going home and you're 10 o'clock at night and then you're having an argument with your wife and you're stressed out and you wake up in the morning, you're still in a crappy mood, and then you're not getting your workouts, so your health goes to crap, but you're making $1 million in business, but for what, at what end, you know? So it's not worth it to me.
I love that, man. And you know what's really interesting is, I may have shared this with you off camera in our one-to-one. When my back was at its worst, the one thing I hadn't done was stopped working. And I ended up, business was going really, really well. And I ended up deciding to take a sabbatical. And I took 4 months off. And we shut down the business. I let go of 95% of our clients, lost all the income, let the team members know, like, hey guys, we're gonna have to pause right now. And I went 4 months into therapy full time. I did 4 days a week of therapy, 4 days a week of therapy at the medical clinic that I was at. I went hard at this stuff. And I'd never stopped working ever. I moved out at 19, and for 10 years, I'd just been working full time.
Nice.
And when I came back to work, I was terrified. I was like, how the hell am I gonna build this business back? But one thing that I promised myself was, I will never, ever let business and money get in the way of my health again. Yeah. And it's been my North Star, and it's been 2 years since the business has reopened. And if things continue to go well this year, we'll have our highest year in revenue yet, of like, but not just revenue, of service, of helping people. I think Travis would agree, like the product we're putting out is the best. The way we're helping people is the best, but we have that North Star of, my North Star is my health. Health is number one. And I try to impress that upon the team members here. And I think that's important to remind people, like you said, it does not matter how much money you make. If I give you $1 million right now, but your back's in pain, your knee's in pain, you're sick all the time, what do you do to enjoy it?
Right.
It's not going to work. And I feel like there's this trap that people are fault in. Do you ever go on Reddit? Do you ever peruse Reddit?
Not really. Not usually, no.
I'm a big Redditor, and there was a subreddit of somebody asked, people that make over $200,000, comment what you do and if you enjoy your job. Almost no one liked their job at that level. And they said, listen, I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. The pay's great, but I have no life. The pay's great, but I don't enjoy my life.
Yeah.
And it really showed me that the closer we can get towards balance in life, which I think sometimes exists, but a lot of the times one thing has to give. But the closer we can get to that balance, I think the more fulfilled and overall happier and healthier we will be.
Well, I love I've thought about that thing too, is the work-life balance, right? But one thing that helps me is trying to be as aligned as possible in every aspect of your life. So it's enjoying that journey of, even though I'm in this season of maybe I'm working a lot more, but I truly love what I do. So even if I'm at work, I'm really enjoying it. And I'm not as home. Of course, we love being at home, right, with our significant others and our loved ones, but I truly love what I'm doing over here and I'm in line with my purpose, then my fulfillment is still super high. Maybe my fitness is down a little bit, maybe my family is down a little bit, but if you have that solid foundation of your home life, as you've talked with your spouse and your loved ones, and they understand the season that you're in, then that helps too. When you come home and you're not, they're not complaining about you being working too much and, all that stuff. But if I think about it as being in alignment, if you can have your core values, and for me, it's my faith, and I can really have that in alignment with what I'm doing in my business and at home. And, we can travel when we want to, but, if you can find fulfillment with where you're at, then that can really help.
Yeah. I completely agree, man. And let me ask you this. I'm curious because as we kind of wrap up here, how do you rest and relax as a business owner? And kind of how do you find that balance, that work-life balance?
So for me, the boundaries are key. I say we have to be in alignment, but we also can't just be working 24/7.
Yeah.
Like weekends are for rest and being at home. So it is kind of just downtime, and I'm a homebody, so I just like being at home. Like I'll go out Roswell. I live in Roswell. We do, me and my wife. So I just going down Canton Street, and seeing what's down there. I think tonight we're going down to the quad in Alpharetta and just hanging out.
Nice.
Just spending quality time. We're doing, our anniversary was actually last week, and we're going in October down to South Georgia, south of Savannah. So a little beach weekend getaway thing. But for me, I'm a pretty simple dude. I just like relaxing at home, taking some sports, UGA, Falcons fan, cursed Falcons fan, but still Falcons fan.
They won first game, bro.
They did. Yeah. Super Bowl? What?
Stop.
It. One game Super Bowl. So we're getting there a little bit at a time. Falcons are getting there, but I just like the simple things, just hanging out and taking it easy, and then catching up with friends, because we all get busy with life, right? And my friends they're all having kids and moved away, so any chance we can get together is always nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. And my family's close too, so.
That's good.
Parents are here, brother and sister in Smyrna, Roswell area. So it's nice to see them, of course, too.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
What's the future of Results Rehab look like? What do you have envisioned?
Man, so that hope and healing in the community is big for me. So I want to be, my coaches call it being famous in your community. So I love just getting involved in it. And it perfectly sums it up.
I will credit that you, but I got to steal that. That's good.
Go for it. I love it. Because the more we can do that, just truly invest in our community and give back, then that has a ripple effect onto the state level, the national level. And I truly believe those grassroots effort can go out to everywhere.
Yeah.
So I just love getting involved in the community however I can, going to volunteer. I like charity events, being involved like It's the Journey, the Georgia 2-day walk, and staying active. So any chance we can get, me and my wife love to go to like the Roswell Mill and getting out and being active. And when you can couple with that with making change in the community, so along that line, I'm a part of an organization called Walk with a Doc. So the whole premise is direct access to your doctor, right? You can come out and we practice what we preach. So you go for a walk, while at the same time, at the beginning of the walk, you have a 10-minute conversation about a health tip, about low back pain, or we have the doctor talk about some kind of disease process. And then you go and walk in the community. You get out in nature, and we know that's healing while you're getting exercise. So it's community events that we can promote at the same time. And I do injury prevention workshops. So getting out and telling people how to stay out of my office, how to do the right thing so that they don't have to come see me all the time.
Yeah.
But I love just making a change at the community level.
Nice, man. Nice. And last thing, and then we'll wrap up. What advice would you give to a younger James? You've been through a lot in your life, and it could be a 7-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, at kind of any age. What advice, if you could go back in time and talk to younger James, what would you tell him?
That's good, man. I would say stop being fearful. You know, I was always afraid of what others would think, you know, so I think that limited me in what I would do, and maybe that's why I'm a homebody now, which I like it now, but now I have the right balance, right? But I think I would say just don't be afraid of who you are, you know, embrace who you are, and don't let anybody make you feel guilty or shameful, you know, and surround yourself with the right friends. And obviously you can't control your family, but try to surround yourself with the right people who are building you up instead of maybe saying the wrong things, and then you internalize those things. But yeah, just embrace your gifts, you know, whoever you are. Don't let somebody make you feel bad and turn that into that shame feeling, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree, man. And man, thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We talked about so many things, more than I was even expecting. I loved it too, man. And thank you for being you. I'm really grateful for being and I'm glad that we met. And
yeah, for sure.
I just appreciate you sharing your story, man, because you know you've been through a lot, and I can guarantee you there's a lot of people out there, both younger and older, that will look at this and be like, all right, he did it. I got to keep going. So
good.
Thanks.
Well, that's the hope. I'm glad I can help anybody out.
Yeah, man. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. And to all of our listeners out there, thank you guys. We've had a lot more comments, shares, likes, messages. It motivates me. It motivates the guests coming on the show. It motivates the team. Everyone's working really hard to just put more content out there. If you guys have anybody else that you want to see on the show, please let us know. We want more people on here, and we appreciate you guys, and we will see you next time on Find Your Edge. Take care.